Okay, so getting back into building our templates here, we've kind of gone through how to name them, how to assign the correct feature. Um, we've added our components here. Here's an example, just a little curb and gutter with a sidewalk and some buffer strips. So this next piece is talking about our constraints. So the constraints are really how these points interact with each other. So just a couple examples here are our curb flow line. We saw this window before. Now we're really going to get into this box here at the bottom. So this point is constrained from our edge of pavement here horizontally 2 feet, which makes sense. We have a 2-foot gutter, and our gutter slope here. So this is really how they interact with each other, how they're kind of drawn out. So I'll go through this one. This is our edge of pavement. It doesn't have any constraints because it's really the origin of the template, which is this purple box here. So assigning constraints, it gives us a pretty good list of options here. Horizontally and vertically are pretty self-explanatory. The slope is another one that's kind of a general one. We use it a lot for roadway grades and gutter slopes. We can use this vector offset tool, which if you select this one, it'll show us, we can pick 2 points here and say how much of an offset. It helps us kind of keep our points in line. That one's not used quite as much. There's a couple options here to project the point. So we can project it to a surface or another design component. And then these last ones here are horizontal, vertical, min and max. That's another one that gets kind of into the weeds of how these points are set up. It will display the point horizontally until a maximum or minimum, and then angle distance as well. I would say generally horizontal, vertical, and slope, and probably project a surface will get you 99% of what you need to draw your templates. So all of these are already pre-populated because they're from our components. They're already set up. We can edit these pretty easily. You know, it's as simple as going in here. This is our sidewalk slope. It's at 2%. Say that's a little high. We can change it to 1.5, hit apply, and you can see it's pretty slight, but you can see it shift here. Here, I'll flip the sign. You can see it a little better. So it'll keep updating. This buffer back here will shift because that's how it's constrained. So that allows us to really keep the points in the right places in relation to each other. Because as you know, these templates are really, you know, if this is our typical section, this isn't true everywhere. So we do have to change the points along our alignment sometimes. So picking the right constraint will help you do that. So if we get into this a little more, one of the big ways we can do that are parametric constraints. We'll get more into how we put those into action in our corridor section, but how we create them and assign them, we do here. So, and that's this last box here for the label. So we have, this is our sidewalk, our back top of sidewalk point. So this is really controlling how the sidewalk itself is shaped. We have a horizontal constraint here of 4 foot. That's our sidewalk width. We have the label assigned here, and a sidewalk slope of 1.5%. So this is how it will create our components later in our corridors everywhere. It'll send it all the way down the alignment, and it'll be a constant shape. So we can adjust that using parametric constraints based on these labels. So that allows us to change it for certain segments. Again, we'll get into that more a little bit later, putting those in action, but this is where we create those points that we can change later. So right now in this template, there's 3 different labels. There's also a buffer width one. This dropdown will show you all, not just in this specific point or component, it'll show you all of them in the template. We can also assign multiple labels. So if I had a couple sidewalks or something else where I wanted to control them all together, it will change that everywhere. So sometimes it's better to say, if there's a sidewalk and a shared use path, say we want to create separate labels to control those separately. The last box here I'll just mention quickly is our horizontal feature constraint. Those take, again, a little setup elsewhere to get to work correctly. But in theory, what they do is this point is now being told to constrain itself horizontally based on this feature. So we can say there's a bridge deck feature. This just a quick example. It will look for, we can say this is 100. It will look 100 feet out to the right, because this is positive for this feature, and it will snap this point there. Again, it takes a little more setup, but if you have a reference file that is feature definitions are assigned correctly, this can be a useful tool to get your widths and your horizontal layout to be able to assign pretty quickly and not have to use a lot of our other tools. So this is how we assign constraints. Again, as we get into, I'll get into a little bit about how we can edit these or kind of test them once they're in here. So it's easy to get these it's easy to get kind of overwhelmed with how all of these interact with each other to make sure they're in the right area. A million times I put them in and they don't quite work right. So the easiest way to test these the first way we can do is up here in this display, is we can switch reviewing components. We can also display constraints instead. So this shows me that, this point here, our sidewalk front bottom, is controlled by this point. And this goes to here. So I can trace back what exactly these the locations are coming from. The other way, which I find most useful, especially as we get further into editing these points along the alignment, so using our parametric constraints, if you use the horizontal feature constraints, is we can say, okay, what will this point do if I move it left to right? I want my sidewalk to get smaller. I don't really want it to overlap or do anything crazy. So I can right click here and do test point controls and do horizontally. So now I can see exactly what this thing is going to do if I move it back and forth. So this is a tool I find really useful. I'm constantly moving these things around to make sure they're set up correctly. The same thing works if I want to do it vertically. So as I change the slope, everything is tied together. It looks correct. If this back bottom point was assigned in the wrong order here, it could change the width. So that's another piece that I think is really useful for kind of viewing how we can change these constraints. And with that, Sahar, can you stop the recording?